I'm going to use a chess metaphor in this video, and I don't want you, because of that, to mistake me for some kind of chess master, because I am definitely not. I'm not even that experienced of a player, but I have played some chess in the past, and I know that occasionally, if you play enough chess, you will find yourself in a game where you realize at some point during the game that you just are not going to win. But if you're smart enough, you can play so that you escape the game with a stalemate, which means that you don't win, but you don't lose either. The outcome is a draw. And it occurs to me that many forces here in the United States especially, and across Western civilization, that are in opposition to social progress, to social justice, that are opposed to gay LGBTQ equality movements and racial equality movements and gender equality movements, that the various forces standing against those things are not playing for a victory anymore, because perhaps they realize that they cannot resist the tide of history, that they are on the wrong side of this, and progress cannot simply be reversed. We're not going to go back to the way things used to be. They're playing for a stalemate. They're playing to preserve the status quo, because even after decades of hard work and significant stirring social progress in this country that has seen the conditions improve for people who have faced racial discrimination or sexual discrimination or discrimination on the basis of their sexual orientation or disability or mental illness or economic class, that even after so many decades of real serious significant progress in those areas, that we still have a status quo that privileges a huge number of people, and it is almost entirely members of those privileged classes who are still standing against things like racial civil rights movements and feminism and LGBTQ equality movements. And if they can play for a stalemate, then they might not win in the sense that they won't get to undo the many reforms that they clearly still have a problem with, but they can maintain the status quo. And maintaining the status quo for them means that they win. And what do I mean by they're playing for a stalemate? Well, many arguments that I hear, both from major public figures on TV, in the media, in politics, and from people, just ordinary private people who talk to each other on Twitter or Facebook or on YouTube or whatever. Many of the arguments made by people who oppose social justice movements seem designed not to persuade people, not to push back against the progress that is being made, but simply to paralyze conversations, to stop people from talking, or to just arrest whatever momentum has been gathered and to just freeze everything the way it is. I'll give you an example. The concept of reverse racism that has once again found its way somewhat into the mainstream thanks to the efforts of people like Bill O'Reilly, who has attempted to tar the Black Lives Matter movement as a racist movement, as a hate movement itself. Now, the movement was created to counter racism and to push back against racism and to confront racism, but the argument is, well, they're racist too. And this is a tactic that I've seen many times before, and it comes up almost every time I see someone speaking out in favor of a civil rights movement, a social justice movement. There are almost always people who try to counter it by saying, yeah, well, you're not any different than the bigots. Because if you think that racial inequality is a problem in this country, then that must mean that you are judging people according to their race, and that makes you a racist. You might think, oh wow, this is a paradox. This is sort of a box that we can't get out of. How are we going to address racial inequality if any attempt to address that inequality is in and of itself racist? It's like we're stuck. And that's the entire point of the argument. The entire point of the argument is to convince you that you are stuck, that any attempt to address and correct an inequality is in and of itself bigoted, racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever. It's designed to freeze you, to convince you that whatever you're doing, you have to stop doing, because what you're doing is actually an example of the problem you are trying to correct. It's a way of saying, hey, let's just leave things the way they are. Another recent example of this sort of thing is the Kim Davis situation, where the desire of a conservative, homophobic Christian to discriminate against gay people in a way that the Supreme Court of the United States has now determined is illegal is pitched by her supporters as a religious liberty issue, when in fact it's not a religious liberty issue at all. It's a discrimination issue. It's a gay rights issue. It has nothing to do with her religious liberty at all, but it's being pitched as though if we are going to have respect for religious freedom in this country, and that is a fundamental American principle that we all, or at least most of us, feel like ought to be protected and ought to be valued. We like having a religiously pluralistic society. At least, and I mean, some of us pay lip service to that, but I think the Kim Davis supporters might say they want a religiously pluralistic society, but what they really want is a society where their religion holds power over the other religions. So it'll be pluralistic, but it'll be Christian dominated. But anyway, they pitch it as, well, if you want that sort of thing, and if religious liberty is something that is important to you, then Kim Davis and the other people who think the way she does, they must have the right to discriminate against people on the basis of their religious faith. And that's completely nuts, because under such a system, the unfair discrimination would be the protected action, not the right of the people who are being discriminated against to be free of that discrimination and to be able to get married and to live their lives however they want. It's once again a tactic that is designed to create a stalemate. It's not designed to roll back the Supreme Court decision. It's not designed to say, okay, our end game is to get rid of same-sex marriage. It's designed to say, okay, fine, they can have same-sex marriage, but those of us who are in positions of authority, who have the ability to deny them their marriage licenses, we should be allowed to do that. And once again, because they occupy the privileged position, if we allow them to stalemate us, then they win. They don't have to defeat the movements of social justice in order to win. All they have to do is stalemate us. And that's why I think many of these anti-social justice movements have adapted from an endgame that is moving for victory to an endgame that is moving for a stalemate. Which means that we, those who care about social justice, those who want to see the rights of LGBTQ people protected under the law, those who want to see people free from discrimination on the basis of their gender identity or their sexual orientation or their race or their ethnicity or their religion or lack thereof or their gender or whatever, that we need to be playing to win. We can't allow them to stalemate us, because if they stalemate us, we lose, because we have not made significant enough gains to be able to say, okay, things are okay the way they are. Yes, there are still some avenues we could explore. There's still some progress to be made. But you know what? If we don't get any further than this, this is okay. We're not in that position. We can't afford to do that. We can't afford to just stop here. There's still too much progress yet to be made. And we have to keep making that progress. We can't allow ourselves to be stalemated.